College friends vanished on trip. 4 months later, this is found inside a shipping container. The metal groaned as the container door was pried open, revealing a sliver of light that cut through 4 months of darkness. Detective Liam Sawyer held his breath, the beam of his flashlight trembling slightly in his weathered hand. Behind him, the harbor's ambient noise faded away as if the world itself was holding its breath. The shipping container, registered as agricultural equipment from Costa Rica, had been flagged by customs only by sheer chance. Now, as the rust-flecked door swung wider, Liam's light caught something that made his heart stutter. A wall covered in photographs, newspaper clippings, and a hand-drawn map with 4 names circled in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. In the center, illuminated in the flashlight's unforgiving beam, sat a weather-beaten camcorder with its red recording light still blinking. "Jesus Christ," whispered Martinez, Liam's younger partner. "Call the bureau. This is them, the Marshall College kids." Liam nodded, unable to speak as his light revealed something else. A journal, its pages fluttering in the breeze from the open door, filled with handwriting that grew increasingly frantic toward the final entries. The last page contained only 5 words. They were watching us all along. 4 months earlier, on a crystalline morning in late May, Emma Reeves had tossed her duffel bag into the back of Tyler Vaughn's faded blue 1989 Jeep Cherokee, her excitement palpable in the spring air. At 22, with graduation behind her and medical school looming in the fall, this summer road trip represented her last gasp of freedom. "You're seriously bringing books?" Tyler laughed, his sandy hair catching the sunlight as he nodded toward Emma's backpack, bulging with paperbacks and her trusty journal. His hazel eyes crinkled at the corners, the same way they had since they'd met in freshman biology 4 years ago. Emma shrugged, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "Some of us plan to have functioning brain cells after a month on the road." But she was smiling too, caught in the infectious joy of their impending adventure. They'd been planning this trip since junior year. 4 friends, 6 states, countless memories to be made before real life pulled them in different directions. Myra Chen appeared at Emma's shoulder, her long, dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail. "Did you pack the first aid kit and the backup chargers?" Always the planner of the group, Myra had spreadsheets for their spreadsheets. Her careful organization balanced Tyler's spontaneity perfectly, a dynamic that had served their friend group well through 4 years of college. "Yes, Mom," Emma teased, but she patted her friend's arm gratefully. Without Myra's planning, they'd probably end up stranded somewhere with dead phones and empty stomachs. "Where's Jaden?" Tyler asked, checking his watch. "If we don't hit the road soon, we'll hit rush hour traffic leaving Richmond." As if summoned by his name, Jaden Williams jogged up to the Jeep, his athletic frame making the heavy camera equipment he carried look deceptively light. "Sorry, had to grab more memory cards. No way am I missing the chance to document our last hurrah." His film school applications were due in September, and this trip footage would be the centerpiece of his portfolio. Emma watched her 3 best friends with a surge of affection that caught her off guard. How had 4 years gone by so quickly? It seemed like yesterday they were awkward freshmen, navigating the intimidating halls of Marshall College together. Now here they were, degrees in hand, poised at the precipice of adulthood. Tyler caught her eye and smiled knowingly. "Getting sentimental already, Reeves? We haven't even left campus." Emma rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. "Shut up and drive, Vaughn." As the Jeep pulled away from Marshall College's red brick buildings, none of them noticed the black sedan that eased into traffic several cars behind them. And none of them could have possibly imagined that in less than a month, their names would be splashed across national headlines. 4 promising graduates vanished without a trace during a summer road trip through the American Southwest. The first few days of their journey passed in a blur of laughter, music, and endless stretches of highway. They headed west with the windows down, the playlist a nostalgic mix of songs that had defined their college years. Fleetwood Mac's "Go Your Own Way" blended into Pearl Jam's "Alive," followed by Tupac and Nirvana, a musical tapestry of their shared history. They stopped in Nashville on the second night, squeezing into a crowded honky-tonk where Tyler, emboldened by 2 beers, sang a spectacularly off-key rendition of a Garth Brooks classic. Jaden captured it all on his camera, narrating for his invisible audience. "And here we witnessed the majestic Tyler Vaughn in his natural habitat, making a complete fool of himself," he commented, zooming in on Tyler's exaggerated performance. Emma and Myra collapsed against each other in fits of laughter, the kind that left their sides aching and tears streaming down their faces. These were the moments Emma wanted to bottle up and keep forever, the unscripted joy that couldn't be planned or scheduled. They camped under the stars in Arkansas, roasted marshmallows while debating the merits of various '90s sitcoms, and skinny-dipped in a secluded lake at midnight, feeling young and invincible. In Oklahoma, they detoured to the site where scenes from The Outsiders had been filmed, recreating the iconic poses for Jaden's camera while quoting lines from the movie they'd all watched together during their first semester. "Stay gold, ponyboy," Myra said wistfully as they drove away, and something about her tone made Emma reach for her journal to capture the moment. It wasn't until they reached the Texas Panhandle that Emma first noticed the black sedan. They had stopped for gas at a rundown station off Route 40, the kind with flickering fluorescents and faded advertisements for cigarette brands that no longer existed. While Tyler filled the tank and Jaden filmed the authentic Americana vibes of the place, Emma wandered inside to pay and grab snacks. The convenience store was a time capsule from 1985, wood-paneled walls decorated with taxidermied fish and faded Polaroids of proud fishermen. Behind the counter, an elderly man with skin like tanned leather watched her with rheumy eyes. "You kids on a road trip?" he asked as he rang up her armful of Twizzlers, Doritos, and Cokes. "Yes, sir," Emma replied politely. "Heading to the Grand Canyon." The man nodded slowly. "Lots of strange things in the desert, things that don't want to be found." His gaze drifted past her to the window where Emma could see her friends laughing by the Jeep. "You all be careful now. Sometimes the road takes people places they don't expect." A chill ran down Emma's spine despite the store's oppressive heat. She chalked it up to the man's cryptic manner and the eerie stillness of the isolated gas station. But as she was walking back to the Jeep, she noticed the black sedan parked on the far side of the lot. Something about it triggered a memory. Hadn't she seen the same car at their last two stops? Before she could mention it to the others, Myra let out an excited squeal. "Guys, I just checked the map and we're only a couple hours from Cadillac Ranch. We have to stop. It's perfect for Jaden's portfolio." The sedan was forgotten as they piled back into the Jeep, windows down against the Texas heat, singing along to TLC's Waterfalls as the flat landscape streaked past. But later that night, as they set up camp in Palo Duro Canyon, Emma spotted it again parked at the far end of the campground's gravel lot. "Hey," she nudged Tyler as they collected firewood. "Have you noticed that black car? I think it's been following us since Oklahoma." Tyler squinted in the direction she pointed, then shrugged. "Probably just heading the same way we are. It's a main route west." But he gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "We can switch up our route tomorrow if it makes you feel better." Emma nodded, trying to shake off her unease. "I'm probably just being paranoid." "With that imagination of yours, never," Tyler teased, and the moment passed. That night, as they sat around the campfire trading ghost stories, Emma noticed Jaden's camera lingering on the distant parking lot. When their eyes met over the flames, she knew he'd seen the sedan too. Later, while the others slept, Emma wrote in her journal by flashlight. "May 29th, something feels off. Maybe it's just end-of-college anxiety catching up with me, but I can't shake the feeling we're being watched. There's this car, a black sedan with tinted windows. I've seen it 4 times now, always keeping its distance, but somehow always there. Tyler thinks I'm imagining things, but Jaden noticed it too. Tomorrow we're heading into New Mexico. If I see it again, I'm going to try to get the license plate." She didn't have to wait long. As they crossed the state line into New Mexico the next day, the sedan was 3 cars behind them. Emma subtly took a photo with her phone and zoomed in on the license plate, Texas tags, but the numbers were partially obscured. "Guys," she said quietly, "that car is definitely following us." Myra twisted in her seat to look. "Are you sure? Why would anyone follow us?" "I don't know," Emma admitted, "but it's been behind us since Oklahoma. Same car, same distance." Tyler checked the rearview mirror, his easy smile fading slightly. "Let's test it." Without warning, he took the next exit, a small road leading to what appeared to be a nowhere town called Cimarron. The sedan continued on the highway, and Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "See, just a coincidence," Tyler said, but his voice lacked conviction. They decided to stop in Cimarron for lunch anyway, finding a small diner that looked like it hadn't changed its decor since Happy Days was on television. Over green chili cheeseburgers that made their eyes water, they debated what to do next. "We should stick to the original plan," Myra argued. "We have reservations at that campground near Santa Fe tonight." "But what if they're waiting for us there?" Jaden countered, his filmmaker's imagination clearly spinning scenarios. "What if they know our itinerary somehow?" Emma chewed her lip. "That's impossible unless," she hesitated, "unless someone's been accessing Myra's spreadsheets online." Myra looked stricken. They're in a private Google Doc, but I guess it's not impossible. Should we call the police? And tell them what? Tyler asked. That we've seen the same car on a major interstate. They'll laugh us out of town. They decided to continue to Santa Fe, but stay in a different campground than originally planned. The change of plans seemed to work. There was no sign of the sedan that evening or the next morning. By the time they reached Albuquerque 2 days later, the incident had been relegated to a spooky road trip story, something to laugh about later. It was in Albuquerque that everything changed. They had checked into a modest motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind with exterior corridors and paper-thin walls. After a day exploring the old town and indulging in green, chilly everything, they were relaxing by the motel's small, kidney-shaped pool. The evening was warm, the sky painted in spectacular shades of orange and pink as the sun set behind distant mesas. "I can't believe we graduate in a few weeks," Myra said, dangling her feet in the water. "Remember when we met at freshman orientation? Tyler spilled his entire coffee down the front of Emma's white shirt." Emma groaned at the memory. "And then tried to help by throwing water on it, which just made it completely see-through." "I was trying to be a gentleman," Tyler protested, though his grin suggested otherwise. "You were trying to see her bra," Jaden corrected, which earned him a splash from Tyler. "Where would you guys be right now if we hadn't all become friends?" Emma asked, suddenly contemplative. They fell silent, considering the question. It was Myra who answered first. "Probably still in my dorm room, color-coding my notes and missing out on everything college was supposed to be about," she admitted. "You guys taught me it was okay to close the books sometimes." "I'd be that pretentious film guy no one wants to hang out with," Jaden said with a self-deprecating laugh. "You all kept me grounded. And I'd be on academic probation without Emma's tutoring and Myra's study schedules," Tyler added. "Probably would have dropped out sophomore year." Emma smiled, warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the New Mexico heat. "And I'd still be the awkward bookworm too afraid to take chances." She raised her plastic cup of cheap boxed wine. "To the family we chose." "To family," they echoed, plastic cups clinking in the twilight. Later, as Emma and Myra walked to the ice machine, a man in a baseball cap emerged from a room at the far end of the corridor. Something about his purposeful stride toward them made Emma's pulse quicken. She grabbed Myra's arm, ready to turn back when the man called out. "Excuse me, ladies, I think you dropped this." He held out a small object. Cautiously, they stopped. In his outstretched palm was a small silver charm, a miniature camera that had been attached to Jaden's backpack. "It was by the pool," the man explained. "Oh, thank you," Myra said, taking it. "Our friend would have been devastated to lose this." The man smiled, but something about it didn't reach his eyes. "You kids enjoying your road trip?" Emma felt her skin prickle. "How did you know we're on a road trip?" His smile didn't waver. "Just a guess, the Jeep with all the gear, the cameras, pretty obvious." He tipped his hat slightly. "You all have a good night now, be safe out there." He walked past them toward the parking lot where Emma glimpsed a familiar black sedan. "Myra," she whispered urgently, "that's him, that's the car." They hurried back to the boys, bursting into the motel room with panicked expressions. "We need to leave," Emma said, already grabbing her backpack. "Now." "Whoa, slow down," Tyler said, rising from the bed where he'd been watching TV. "What happened?" Between them, Emma and Myra explained the encounter. Jaden's face drained of color when they showed him the charm. "I didn't lose this," he said quietly. "It was securely attached this morning. Someone removed it deliberately." They checked out within 20 minutes, ignoring the motel clerk's confused questions. Back in the Jeep, Tyler drove aimlessly through Albuquerque's streets, making random turns to ensure they weren't being followed. "We should go to the police," Myra insisted, her voice trembling slightly. "And tell them what?" Jaden countered. "That a guy returned something I dropped and he happens to drive a black car. They'll think we're paranoid college kids who have watched too many horror movies." "We need evidence," Emma said firmly. "Next time we see the car, we get clear photos, maybe follow them for a change, find out who they are and what they want." Tyler shot her an incredulous look. "Are you insane? We're not playing detective here, Emma. If these people are dangerous, we need to know why they're targeting us," she interrupted. "What makes 4 college students so interesting? We're not exactly international spies." They debated their options for hours, driving in a wide loop around the city before finally checking into another motel under Tyler's name instead of Myra's, who had made all their previous reservations. They agreed to take shifts keeping watch overnight, with Emma taking the first watch while the others tried to sleep. Alone in the darkness, Emma wrote in her journal, "June 3rd, something is very wrong. The man with the sedan approached Myra and me tonight. He knew things he shouldn't have known." Returned Jaden's camera charm that wasn't actually lost. We're all freaked out, but what do we do? Go home with our tails between our legs, call the police with our non-evidence. I keep asking myself what makes us worth following. Is it something we saw, something we know without realizing it? I can't shake the feeling that we've stumbled into something bigger than us, but I have no idea what it could be. She closed the journal and peered through a slit in the curtains at the empty parking lot. The sedan was nowhere to be seen, but that brought little comfort. Whoever was following them knew where they were. And worse, they wanted the four friends to know they were being watched. The question was, why? Morning brought clearer heads and a decision. They would continue their trip but alter their route significantly. Instead of heading to the Grand Canyon as planned, they would drive south toward White Sands National Park, then cut west through the back roads of southern New Mexico and Arizona. They would pay for everything in cash, stay off social media, and keep their phones in airplane mode except for emergencies. It's probably nothing, Tyler said as they loaded the Jeep, though his tight expression belied his words. Some weird coincidence or misunderstanding, but better safe than sorry, right? Emma nodded, but couldn't shake her growing unease. The black sedan hadn't reappeared overnight, which somehow felt more ominous than if it had been parked outside their door. They drove south on I-25, the sprawling desert landscape a stark contrast to the lush Virginia countryside they'd left behind. Conversation was sparse, each of them lost in their thoughts, jumping at the sight of any dark vehicle on the highway. By mid-afternoon, they reached Truth or Consequences, a small town known for its hot springs and unusual name. They stopped for a late lunch at a local diner where the waitress, a woman in her 60s with a beehive hairdo that defied both gravity and time, chatted amicably as she refilled their coffee cups. "You kids look like you've seen a ghost," she remarked, eyeing their tense faces. "Everything all right?" "Just tired from driving," Myra replied with a forced smile. The waitress nodded knowingly. "Well, if you need to relax, the hot springs here are healing. Wash away all your troubles." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Though some troubles follow you no matter where you go." Emma's fork clattered against her plate. "What do you mean by that?" The waitress looked startled by Emma's intensity. "Just an old saying, honey, nothing to get worked up about." She retreated to the counter, occasionally glancing back at their table with concern. "You're making us look suspicious," Tyler hissed. "We need to act normal." "Normal?" Emma whispered back. "There's nothing normal about being stalked across 3 states." "We don't know that we're being stalked," Jaden pointed out, though he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe it really is just a weird coincidence." Emma was about to respond when the diner's door opened and a police officer walked in. Her heart leaped into her throat until the officer nodded at the waitress and took a seat at the counter, clearly a regular on his lunch break. Still, Emma couldn't help noticing how his gaze lingered on their table for a moment too long. They paid quickly and left, the bell above the door jingling merrily in stark contrast to their somber mood. As they walked back to the Jeep, Emma spotted a small bookstore across the street. "Wait," she said, grabbing Tyler's arm. "I want to check something." The bookstore was cramped but cozy, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and that distinctive scent of old paper and dust that all good bookstores share. A bell tinkled as they entered, and an elderly man with a magnificent white beard looked up from behind the counter. "Welcome," he said warmly. "Anything in particular you're looking for?" "Do you have a local history section?" Emma asked. The man nodded, pointing to a corner of the store. "Right over there, interested in the hot springs or perhaps the town's name change. That's always a hit with tourists." "Just browsing," Emma replied, already heading toward the indicated shelves. The others followed, confused. "What are we looking for?" Myra whispered. "I don't know exactly," Emma admitted. "But something the waitress said got me thinking. What if we've stumbled into something local, some kind of regional issue we don't know about?" They spent 30 minutes scanning books about local history, geology, and folklore, finding nothing that seemed relevant to their situation. Emma was about to give up when a thin volume caught her eye. "Desert Disappearances, Unexplained Vanishings in the American Southwest." She pulled it from the shelf, a chill running through her as she flipped through the pages. Most of the cases were decades-old hikers who vanished without a trace, solo travelers whose cars were found abandoned on remote highways. But toward the back, a more recent chapter caught her eye. "The Highway Corridor, Pattern or Paranoia." The chapter detailed a series of disappearances along Interstate 40 and connecting routes through New Mexico, Arizona, and Eastern California over the past 5 years. Most were solo travelers or pairs, but one case involved a group of 3 environmental science students who vanished while collecting soil samples near the Very Large Array Radio Telescope facility in 2019. Their equipment was found perfectly intact, as if they had simply stepped away for a moment and never returned. More disturbing were the commonalities. In several cases, witnesses reported seeing the missing persons in the company of unknown individuals shortly before they vanished. In 2 instances, surveillance footage showed black sedans in the vicinity. "Guys," Emma whispered, her mouth dry, "I think I found something." They huddled around the book, reading over her shoulder. Myra's face grew increasingly pale, while Jaden and Tyler exchanged grim looks. "This doesn't prove anything," Tyler said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Black sedans are common. These could be completely unrelated incidents. Or it could be exactly what's happening to us," Emma countered. "Look at the pattern, isolated areas, people who wouldn't be immediately missed." "College students on a road trip," Jaden added quietly. "We need to go to the police," Myra insisted. "Right now, show them this book, tell them everything." Emma hesitated. "What if they're involved somehow? Small town, everyone knows everyone. What if we can't trust them?" "That's paranoid thinking, Emma," Tyler said, though he looked troubled. "Not every cop is corrupt. But some are," she insisted, "and we don't know which is which." In the end, they compromised. They would drive to Las Cruces, a larger city where they'd be less conspicuous, and approach the police there. They purchased the book despite the shopkeeper's curious glance, then returned to the Jeep and continued south. They were an hour outside Truth or Consequences when Jaden, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up from the back seat. "I think I know why they're following us," he said, his voice tight with tension. "The memorial service." The others exchanged confused glances. "What memorial service?" Myra asked. "For Professor Harlow. Remember, the week before finals, there was that memorial service for the anthropology professor who died over spring break." Jaden leaned forward between the front seats. "Y'all went because Emma needed moral support. He was her advisor." Emma nodded slowly, the memory coming back. "Right, but what does that have to do with anything? I was filming that day for the campus memorial project," Jaden continued, his words coming faster now. "And I caught something in the background I didn't notice at the time." He pulled out his laptop from his backpack, fingers flying over the keys. "I was reviewing footage last night while you guys were sleeping, and I found this." He turned the screen toward them. The video showed the memorial service in the college chapel, rows of students and faculty dressed in black, a portrait of Professor Harlow on an easel beside the pulpit. As the camera panned across the crowd, Jaden paused the footage and pointed to a figure near the back, a man in a dark suit, partially obscured by a column. "I wouldn't have thought anything of it except—" He fast-forwarded to another clip, this one from outside after the service. The same man could be seen in the background, standing near a black sedan, talking intently with another man whose face wasn't visible. "That could be anyone," Tyler argued. "The service was open to the public." "Maybe," Jaden conceded, "but then I found this." He opened another file, footage from a party at their apartment 3 weeks later. The camera had been set up on a tripod, capturing their friends dancing and laughing. Through the window in the background, barely noticeable, the same black sedan parked across the street. A heavy silence fell over the Jeep. It was Myra who finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Professor Harlow didn't just die, did he? He killed himself. At least that's what they told us." Emma felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. "He left me a package," she said slowly. "The day before he died, I never opened it. With finals and graduation, I completely forgot about it." "What?" Tyler nearly swerved off the road. "You have a package from a professor who committed suicide, and you forgot about it." "It's in my duffel bag," Emma said defensively. "He was always giving me books and articles. I figured it was just more reading recommendations for med school. I was going to open it after the trip." "Well, open it now," Myra exclaimed. They pulled over at the next rest stop, a desolate patch of concrete with a single picnic table baking in the afternoon sun. Emma rummaged through her duffel bag, eventually extracting a padded manila envelope with "Emma, read when you're somewhere safe," scrawled across the front in Professor Harlow's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten letter. "Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm already gone. I've tried to convince myself that what I've discovered is a product of paranoia or academic obsession, but the evidence has become too substantial to ignore. During my last expedition to the Chihuahuan Desert, I uncovered something that was never meant to be found, a pattern of disappearances connected to certain GPS coordinates that seem to defy explanation. The USB contains all my research, including photographic evidence that I believe proves government involvement in covering up what's happening in the desert. I've trusted no one with this information but you, Emma. Your analytical mind and unwavering integrity make you the only person I can rely on to continue this work. But be careful, they are watching. They know I've discovered their operation, which is why by the time you read this, I will have taken my own life, or so it will appear. Trust no one in uniform. Use secure channels only. The truth must come out. With deepest regret and highest hopes, Malcolm Harlow. Emma looked up from the letter, her face ashen. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What does it say?" Tyler demanded, reaching for the letter, but Emma pulled it back. "We need to get somewhere safe before we look at what's on this drive," she said, glancing around the deserted rest stop. "Somewhere with internet access, but public enough that we won't be easily grabbed." "Grabbed?" Myra's voice rose in pitch. "Emma, you're scaring me." "Good," Emma replied grimly, stuffing the letter and USB drive into her pocket. "You should be scared. We all should be." They decided to continue to Las Cruces as planned, find a busy public library or coffee shop, and review the contents of the USB drive. As they pulled back onto the highway, a tense silence filled the Jeep. The vast desert landscape suddenly seemed less majestic and more menacing, a perfect place for people to vanish without a trace. An hour later, they entered Las Cruces, the second largest city in New Mexico and home to New Mexico State University. The familiar surroundings of a college town provided a small measure of comfort as they located a crowded Starbucks near campus. Inside, they claimed a table in the corner with their backs to the wall and clear sightlines to both the entrance and the emergency exit. Emma pulled out her laptop, inserted the USB drive, and huddled with her friends around the screen. The drive contained several folders meticulously labeled with dates. The earliest was from 3 years ago, shortly after Professor Harlow had received a substantial research grant to study indigenous migration patterns in the Chihuahuan Desert. "This is from his first expedition after getting the Wainwright grant," Emma explained as she clicked through files. "He was mapping ancient trade routes through the desert when he said he made an unexpected discovery." The folder contained field notes, photographs, and GPS coordinates. Most seemed like standard anthropological research until they reached a subfolder labeled Anomalies. Inside were photos of what appeared to be tire tracks and modern garbage in a remote area where no roads existed on any map. "He was tracking these intrusions into protected land," Emma murmured, skimming his notes. "At first, he thought it was just illegal dumping or maybe drug traffickers, but then he found this." The next photo showed what looked like a metal hatch partially buried in the sand, with no identifying markings except a simple black triangle etched into the surface. "What is that?" Myra whispered. "Some kind of bunker entrance?" "Whatever it is, it's not supposed to be there," Emma replied. "According to his notes, this area is protected federal land with no authorized construction of any kind." They continued through the files, watching as Professor Harlow's research shifted from indigenous migration patterns to documenting these mysterious installations. Over 3 years, he had mapped 7 similar hatches, all in remote desert locations spanning the border regions of New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. The most disturbing folder was labeled simply Witnesses. It contained interviews with local ranchers and hikers who reported strange phenomena. Unmarked helicopters landing in the desert at night, convoys of black vehicles traveling off-road, and in one case, a rancher who claimed to have been threatened by men claiming to be federal agents when he stumbled upon a similar hatch on the edge of his property. "This is insane," Tyler muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Your professor went full conspiracy theorist." "Malcolm Harlow was the most rational person I knew," Emma defended. "He wouldn't make this up." The final folder was dated just 3 days before the professor's death. It contained a single video file. With growing apprehension, Emma clicked play. Professor Harlow's face filled the screen, haggard and unshaven, his normally tidy office in disarray behind him. "Emma," he began, his voice strained, "if you're watching this, then they've gotten to me. I've encrypted the most damning evidence and hidden it where only you would think to look." He glanced nervously over his shoulder before continuing. "What I've discovered goes beyond simple government overreach. These installations are part of a classified program codenamed Dreamcatcher. I believe they're being used to intercept and detain certain individuals, people who have seen things they weren't meant to see. The pattern of disappearances follows a geographic and temporal logic that cannot be coincidental." He leaned closer to the camera, lowering his voice. 3 days ago, I observed them taking someone, a hiker who ventured too close to one of the hatches. They came in a black sedan, 2 men in suits. The hiker never emerged from the vehicle." He swallowed hard. "I've been followed ever since. Black sedan, changing license plates, but always the same vehicle. They're watching my home, my office." "I've seen them outside your apartment too, Emma. I'm so sorry to have put you in danger through association." Emma felt the blood drain from her face as Professor Harlow continued. The complete files, including the video of the abduction, are hidden in the place where you first showed interest in my work. Remember the question you asked about anomalous patterns in migration routes? Look there." He paused, conflict evident on his face. "I contemplated destroying everything, but the truth needs to come out. People are disappearing, Emma, and whatever is happening inside those installations, it's not sanctioned by any legitimate oversight committee." The video ended abruptly, leaving them staring at a black screen in stunned silence. "Holy shit," Jaden breathed. "Your professor was murdered." "We don't know that," Tyler interjected, but his face had lost all color. "The black sedan," Myra whispered. "The same one that's been following us. They think we have the missing evidence." Emma sat back, her mind racing. "The place where I first showed interest in his work," she murmured. "That would be the anthropology library. We were discussing migration patterns of ancient Pueblo peoples when I pointed out a statistical anomaly in his data set." "So the evidence is hidden somewhere in your college library, 2,000 miles away," Tyler said flatly. "Great. Mystery solved. Now can we please go to the police?" "Not the police," Emma insisted. "Did you not hear what he said? Trust no one in uniform." "We need to go to the media with this." "With what?" Tyler demanded, gesturing at the laptop. "Blurry photos of what might be a hatch and the ravings of a professor who, I hate to point out, clearly had some mental health issues toward the end. The media will laugh us out of the building." "Then we need the video he mentioned," Emma said firmly, "the one showing an actual abduction." "Which is hidden across the country," Myra reminded her. Emma chewed her lip thoughtfully. "Maybe not. He said it was hidden where I would think to look, based on our conversation about migration patterns." Suddenly, her eyes widened. "Wait, I think I know where it is." She pulled out her phone and opened Google Maps, zooming in on a location in the desert about 50 miles west of their current position. "Here," she said, pointing to a seemingly empty stretch of desert. "This is where we were planning to stop anyway, the Three Rivers Petroglyph site. It contains one of the largest collections of prehistoric rock art in the Southwest. Professor Harlow and I discussed it extensively because it was a key marker in the migration patterns we were studying." "You think he hid the evidence at a tourist site?" Jaden asked skeptically. "It's perfect," Emma insisted. "Public enough to access without suspicion, but remote enough that random people wouldn't stumble upon it. And he knew I was planning this road trip. I talked about it in his office several times. He mentioned the petroglyph site specifically in my last advising session." The others exchanged uncertain glances. "Even if you're right," Myra said carefully, "going there means deviating from our new route if they are following us." "They already know where we are," Emma pointed out. "That black sedan isn't exactly subtle. And if they're after the evidence Professor Harlow left behind, we need to get to it before they realize where it is." After heated debate, they agreed to head to the petroglyph site the next morning. They checked into a chain hotel near the university, paying cash and using Jaden's ID since he hadn't been the one making their previous reservations. They took turns keeping watch throughout the night, but saw no sign of the black sedan. Morning brought a clear sky and renewed determination. They set out for Three Rivers, the jeep winding through increasingly barren landscape. The petroglyph site itself was a rocky hillside covered in ancient carvings, spirals, animals, geometric shapes, and humanoid figures etched into the dark desert varnish by native peoples over 1,000 years ago. They paid the entrance fee and began hiking the trail that wound among the petroglyphs, ostensibly tourists enjoying the prehistoric art, but in reality scanning for anything that might be Professor Harlow's hiding place. After an hour of fruitless searching, frustration was setting in. "This is impossible," Tyler complained, wiping sweat from his brow. "There are over 21,000 glyphs here spread across 50 acres. How are we supposed to find one specific hiding spot?" Emma paused, staring thoughtfully at a nearby petroglyph, a spiral surrounded by dots that some archaeologists believed represented stars. "He would have left a clue specific to our conversation," she mused. "Something about statistical anomalies in migration patterns." She pulled out her phone and opened the photo gallery, scrolling back to pictures from the previous semester. "Here," she said triumphantly, showing them a whiteboard covered in Professor Harlow's handwriting. "This was the day I pointed out the anomaly. We were tracking seasonal migration routes, and I noticed these three sites formed a perfect equilateral triangle, statistically improbable given the terrain." Myra studied the image. "So we're looking for a triangle pattern in the petroglyphs." "Not just any triangle," Emma corrected. "A specific one with these proportions, oriented exactly northeast to southwest." Armed with this information, they split up to cover more ground, staying within sight of each other but searching different sections of the hillside. 20 minutes later, Jaden's excited shout drew them together again. "I think I found it," he called, pointing to a grouping of petroglyphs that indeed formed a triangle with the exact orientation from Emma's photo. They gathered around, searching the area carefully. It was Myra who spotted it first, a small section of rock that seemed slightly discolored compared to its surroundings. When pressed in a particular way, it shifted, revealing a small cavity behind it. Inside was a weatherproof case containing another USB drive and a handwritten note with a single sentence. "The truth is hidden in plain sight." With trembling hands, Emma secured the case in her backpack. "Let's get back to the Jeep," she said quietly. "I don't want to check this here." They had just started down the trail when Jaden, who was bringing up the rear, suddenly grabbed Emma's arm. "Don't look now," he whispered, "but there are 2 men in suits at the visitor center talking to the ranger." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "Are they looking this way?" "Not yet, but they will be soon. The ranger is pointing at the trail." "Split up," Tyler decided quickly. "Myra and I will create a distraction. You two get to the Jeep and be ready to drive." Before Emma could protest, Tyler and Myra veered off toward a group of tourists, Tyler clutching his stomach and beginning to moan theatrically about heatstroke. As predicted, the commotion drew the attention of everyone at the visitor center, including the men in suits. Emma and Jaden used the distraction to hurry down an alternate path that led to the parking lot. They reached the Jeep without incident, Jaden sliding behind the wheel while Emma kept watch from the passenger seat. Come on," she muttered, watching for their friends. 5 agonizing minutes later, Tyler and Myra appeared, walking briskly but not running, which would have drawn attention. They climbed into the back seat, and Jaden immediately started the engine. "Did they see you?" Emma asked as they pulled out of the parking lot. "I don't think so," Tyler replied, glancing back through the rear window. "The ranger was busy calling for medical assistance." By the time he realized I'd made a miraculous recovery, we were already heading down the trail. They drove in tense silence, taking a series of back roads to avoid the main highway. When they were certain they weren't being followed, they pulled over in the shade of a massive rock formation to examine their discovery. Emma's laptop booted up slowly, the seconds stretching into eternities as they waited. Finally, she inserted the USB drive, which contained a single video file and a text document. The video began with shaky footage of a desert landscape similar to the one surrounding them. The camera was positioned on high ground, looking down at one of the metal hatches Professor Harlow had documented. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, a figure appeared in the frame, a solitary hiker with a large backpack, apparently taking GPS readings with a handheld device. As they watched, a black sedan appeared on a dirt road, approaching the hiker. 2 men in suits emerged, showing what appeared to be badges. A brief conversation ensued, though the distance made it impossible to hear what was said. The hiker appeared confused, then concerned, then alarmed, backing away from the men. One of them reached inside his jacket, and though the camera didn't capture what he withdrew, the hiker immediately became compliant, allowing himself to be escorted to the sedan. What happened next made Emma's blood run cold. Instead of driving away, the men led the hiker to the metal hatch, which one of them opened using some kind of electronic key. The hiker was escorted inside, followed by one of the men. The second man returned to the sedan, drove it closer to the hatch, and began unloading the hiker's equipment. He methodically emptied the backpack, examining each item before placing most of them inside a black duffel bag. The original backpack and a few selected items were then carried into the hatch, which closed behind him. 15 minutes later, the footage clearly showed the timestamp. Both men emerged without the hiker, got into the sedan, and drove away. "Jesus," Tyler whispered. "They just took him." Emma opened the text document, which contained Professor Harlow's final notes. This footage was captured on April 12, 2023, approximately 20 miles northwest of Deming, NM. The hiker was later identified as Colin Reeves, 35, an environmental engineer from Tucson. 3 days after this recording, his backpack and some equipment were found abandoned at a campsite near the Gila Wilderness, 80 miles from this location. A massive search was conducted, but Reeves himself was never found. This is the 7th such incident I've documented in 3 years. The pattern is always the same. Someone encounters one of these hatches, and shortly thereafter they disappear. Their belongings are later discovered in a location that creates a false trail for search parties. What happens to these people inside the hatches remains unknown, but the fact that they never re-emerge suggests something beyond simple questioning or intimidation. My attempts to locate official records of these facilities have been met with denials, and increasingly, surveillance and intimidation. Emma, if you're reading this, you need to get this evidence to Senator Miranda Gallagher's office in Washington. She chairs the oversight committee that could launch an investigation beyond the reach of whoever is running this operation. Trust no one else with this information. I'm sorry to have brought this danger to your door. Be smarter than I was. MH, a heavy silence fell over the Jeep as they absorbed the implications of what they'd just seen. We need to get this to the senator, Emma said finally, just like he asked. Are you insane? Tyler exploded. Did you see what happened to that hiker, to your professor? These people don't mess around, Emma. They make people disappear. So what's your suggestion? She fired back. Pretend we never saw this. Go back to our regular lives knowing that people are being abducted in the desert by men in suits. Yes, Tyler shouted. That's exactly what we should do. Delete the files, throw away the drives, and get as far from New Mexico as possible. We're in way over our heads here. I agree with Emma, Jaden said quietly. We can't just walk away from this. That could have been any of us on that video. Myra, always the mediator, raised her hands. Let's think this through logically. We need to get this evidence to someone who can actually do something about it, but we also need to ensure our own safety. The senator's office is in Washington, which is thousands of miles away. And we're being followed, Emma added grimly. They know we have something, or they suspect we do. They're not going to just let us drive across the country to expose them. They debated their options as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert. Finally, they formulated a plan. They would upload the evidence to a secure cloud server as a backup, then split up. Jaden and Myra would take the Jeep and continue on their original route as a decoy, while Emma and Tyler would find alternative transportation to get to Washington with the original USB drives. As night fell, they drove to a small motel on the outskirts of Alamogordo where they managed to secure a room with decent Wi-Fi. While Jaden worked on uploading the files through an encrypted connection, Emma studied maps, trying to determine the safest route east. We could take a bus, she suggested, or maybe a train from El Paso. Too easy to track, Tyler countered. They'll be watching all the stations. We need something less predictable. It was Myra who found the solution, scrolling through a local classified ads website on her phone. What about this? She asked, showing them an advertisement. Freight company seeking co-drivers for cross-country haul, no experience necessary, cash pay. A trucking company? Tyler looked skeptical. It's perfect, Myra insisted. They're leaving tomorrow morning, heading to Atlanta. From there you could catch a bus or train to Washington, who would look for college students in a freight truck. After some discussion, they agreed it was their best option. Jaden completed the file upload around midnight, creating multiple backup copies and sending encrypted access information to each of their email accounts. If anything happens to any of us, he said solemnly, the others will still be able to get the evidence to the senator. They spent one last night together in the cramped motel room, reminiscing about happier times at Marshall College, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy even as fear gnawed at their insides. In the morning, they would split up, potentially for the last time. Dawn broke with a blood-red sunrise, the desert sky ablaze with ominous color. They packed silently, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the world was beginning to stir distant traffic, a dog barking, the hum of the motel's ice machine. Emma hugged Myra tightly, fighting back tears. Be careful, she whispered. If you see that sedan, don't try to be heroes, just run. Myra nodded against her shoulder. You too, get that evidence to Washington, make it count. The two groups parted in the motel parking lot, Jaden and Myra in the Jeep, heading north toward Colorado as a diversion, while Emma and Tyler set out on foot toward the trucking company half a mile away. As they walked along the dusty roadside, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. Maybe we should stay together, she said suddenly. Safety in numbers, right? Tyler shook his head. We've been over this. One target is easier to track than two. This gives us the best chance of getting through. They reached the trucking company, a small outfit with a gravel lot containing 3 semi-trucks. The owner, a weathered man named Ray with a salt and pepper beard and forearms covered in faded tattoos, looked them over skeptically. College kids, huh? Looking for adventure on the open road? He didn't wait for an answer. I don't care why you want the job, long as you can stay awake and keep Dale company. He's getting older, ain't supposed to drive more than 10 hours a day. You split the driving, you each get $500 cash when you reach Atlanta. No drugs, no booze in the cab. You got a license. Tyler produced his driver's license. I've never driven a semi before, he admitted. Ray laughed. You ain't driving, kid. You're keeping Dale awake and handling the logbook, maybe driving the car behind the truck when we reach Atlanta. He jerked a thumb toward a silver-haired man checking tire pressure on a massive blue semi. That's Dale, been driving for 40 years, ornery as hell but knows the roads better than GPS, trucks leaving in 30 minutes, bathrooms around back if you need it. As Ray walked away, Emma and Tyler exchanged glances. Car? Emma asked. What car? We're transporting a car to a dealership in Atlanta, explained Dale, who had approached without them noticing. His voice was a gravelly rumble, his face deeply lined but his eyes sharp and assessing. It's strapped down in the trailer. Ray didn't tell you that part, did he? They shook their heads. Dale snorted. Typical, Ray's not big on details. He looked them over with the same skepticism as his boss. You two running from something? Emma felt her heart skip a beat. What? No, we just need to get east and we're low on funds. Dale held her gaze for an uncomfortable moment, then shrugged. None of my business, but I don't want any trouble with the law. I'm 2 years from retirement looking to keep my record clean. No trouble, Tyler assured him. We're just trying to get to Washington to visit my uncle. Thought we'd see some of the country along the way. Dale seemed satisfied with this explanation. Be ready to roll in 20 minutes. Bring your own food and water for the first leg. We'll stop outside Amarillo for dinner. As he walked back to the truck, Emma whispered, Do you think he suspects something? Everyone's suspicious of hitchhikers, Tyler replied. Just act normal. 20 minutes later, they were climbing into the cab of the semi, their backpacks stowed behind the seats. Dale ran through a brief orientation, where to sit, what not to touch, how to use the CB radio in an emergency before starting the massive engine, which rumbled to life like a waking giant. Next stop, Texas, Dale announced as they pulled onto the highway, the rising sun at their backs. Hope you kids like country music, 'cause that's all we're gonna get on the radio for the next 800 miles. As the truck gathered speed, Emma gazed out the window at the receding desert landscape. Somewhere behind them, Jaden and Myra were heading north in the Jeep, creating a false trail. Somewhere ahead lay Washington and Senator Gallagher, their best hope for exposing whatever sinister operation was unfolding in the desert. And somewhere, potentially following them even now, were the men in the black sedan who had already made at least 8 people disappear without a trace. The first few hours on the road passed uneventfully. Dale was not much of a conversationalist, content to focus on driving, while Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard played softly on the radio. Emma and Tyler maintained their cover story, sharing carefully edited details about their lives at Marshall College and their supposed plans to visit Tyler's fictional uncle in Washington. By mid-afternoon, they had crossed into Texas, the landscape gradually transitioning from desert to the rolling plains of the Panhandle. They stopped at a truck stop outside Amarillo for a late lunch, the 3 of them sitting at a corner booth while Dale regaled them with stories from his decades on the road. You two seem awful tense for kids on an adventure, he remarked as they picked at their meals. Something you're not telling old Dale? Emma froze, a French fry halfway to her mouth, but Tyler smoothly interjected. Finals just ended. I guess we're still decompressing from the stress. Dale nodded, seemingly satisfied. College. Never went myself, got my education on the road, met all kinds of people, seen all kinds of things. He leaned in slightly. Including things I probably wasn't supposed to see. Emma's pulse quickened. What do you mean? The old trucker's eyes twinkled mysteriously. Let's just say the government's got all sorts of operations out in those empty spaces most folks fly over, especially in New Mexico. He tapped the side of his nose. A man who drives the same routes for 40 years, he notices patterns. Strange facilities where no facilities should be. Unmarked vehicles, men in suits where suits don't belong. Tyler shot Emma a warning glance, but she couldn't help herself. Have you ever reported what you've seen? Dale laughed, a harsh bark that drew momentary attention from nearby diners. To who? The same folks running whatever it is. No, thank you. I'm not looking to disappear. He studied their faces, noticing their reactions. Hit a nerve there, did I? Before either could respond, Dale's expression changed, his gaze fixing on something beyond their booth. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered. Speaking of men who don't belong. Emma resisted the urge to turn around. What is it? 2 fellas in suits just walked in a truck stop in Amarillo. Dale's voice was casual, but his eyes had hardened. And they're looking mighty interested in this table. Tyler's hand found Emma's under the table, squeezing hard. What do we do? He whispered. Dale stood up, dropping cash on the table. You two head to the restrooms. There's a staff exit by the kitchen. I'll create a distraction. Meet me at the truck in 5 minutes. Why are you helping us? Emma asked, bewildered by this unexpected ally. The old trucker's weathered face softened momentarily. Let's just say I had a nephew about your age, had some theories about government black sites, went missing 3 years back. His jaw tightened. Never found him, now go. They didn't need to be told twice. As Dale approached the front counter, loudly complaining about his food, Emma and Tyler slipped toward the restrooms and then through the kitchen, ignoring the protests of the startled staff. They emerged into a back alley where delivery trucks were parked, then circled around to the main lot where their semi waited. 4 tense minutes later, Dale appeared, walking unhurriedly toward the truck. "Get in and stay low," he instructed calmly. "Our friends in suits are occupied with the state trooper I may have informed about potential drug dealers in the restaurant." Once inside the cab, Dale started the engine but didn't immediately pull away. "Now," he said, turning to face them fully, "you want to tell me what kind of trouble you're really in? Cause those men back there. They're not local, and they're not after drug runners." Emma and Tyler exchanged a long look, silently debating how much to reveal. Finally, Emma made a decision. "You have evidence," she said quietly, "about people disappearing in the desert, being taken by men like the ones back there. We're trying to get it to someone who can do something about it." Dale's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps, or confirmation of a long-held suspicion. "Your friends, the ones you were traveling with, where are they?" "Creating a diversion," Tyler admitted. "Heading in another direction to split their attention." Dale nodded slowly. "Smart. But not smart enough." He gestured toward the side mirror. "Black sedan, 3 o'clock, been following us since we left the truck stop." Emma's stomach dropped as she spotted the familiar vehicle lingering at the edge of the parking lot. "How did they find us so quickly?" "My guess, they're tracking your phones," Dale said. "First rule of running, ditch the electronics." "We can't," Emma protested. "The evidence is on a drive, but we have backups in cloud storage we can access through our phones." Dale considered this. "All right, then we need to move faster than they can follow." He put the truck in gear. "And we need to lose the tail." What followed was a master class in evasion from a man who knew every back road and truck route across the panhandle. Dale took them on a winding path through small towns and farm roads, doubling back and changing directions until the black sedan was nowhere to be seen in their mirrors. "They'll have called for backup," Dale warned as evening approached. "We need to get you two on a different mode of transport. Too easy to spot a big rig." "But how?" Tyler asked. "We can't exactly hop on a plane." Dale smiled for the first time, a crooked grin that transformed his face. "Who said anything about a plane?" He reached for the CB radio. "I've got friends, folks who have been watching these government types for years, part of a network." "A network of what? Conspiracy theorists?" Tyler asked skeptically. "Of people who have lost someone," Dale replied, his voice hardening again. "People who want answers." He adjusted the radio frequency. "And some of them have their own planes." That night, in a small private airfield outside Wichita Falls, Emma and Tyler found themselves boarding a single-engine Cessna piloted by a woman in her 50s who introduced herself only as Margaret. Dale embraced them both before they climbed aboard. "Get that evidence where it needs to go," he said gruffly. "Make them pay for what they've done." The next 12 hours were a blur of small airfields, nervous waits in hangars, and 2 more plane changes with pilots who asked no questions and expected no answers. By dawn, they were in a car driven by a silent man with military bearing, heading toward Washington, D.C. "Who are all these people?" Emma whispered to Tyler as they watched the sunrise from the backseat. "How is this network even possible?" "People who have lost someone," Tyler repeated Dale's words. "I guess when that happens, you either accept the official story or you start looking for the truth." They reached the outskirts of Washington by mid-morning, the driver finally breaking his silence to give them instructions. "Senator Gallagher's office is in the Hart Building. Security is tight. You'll need ID to enter. Our contact inside is named Collins, works as a legislative aide. Give him this." He handed them a business card with a single word handwritten on the back. "Dreamcatcher." "What if Collins isn't there?" Emma asked. "Then you wait. Do not give this evidence to anyone else." The driver pulled into a parking garage and stopped. "This is as far as I go. The metro station is 2 blocks east. Good luck." An hour later, they stood outside the imposing Hart Senate office building, exhausted, disheveled, and acutely aware of how out of place they looked among the polished professionals streaming in and out of the building. "I feel like we have fugitives stamped on our foreheads," Tyler muttered as they approached the security checkpoint. Emma squeezed his hand. "We're just college students visiting our senator. Nothing suspicious about that." They submitted their IDs and passed through the metal detectors without incident, then followed directions to Senator Gallagher's office on the 3rd floor. A receptionist greeted them with professional courtesy. "We'd like to speak with Mr. Collins," Emma stated, trying to project confidence. "It's about a research project from Marshall College." The receptionist's expression remained pleasantly neutral. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but we have this." Emma slid the business card across the desk, the Dreamcatcher side down. The receptionist picked it up, glanced at both sides, and her demeanor subtly shifted. "Please have a seat. I'll see if Mr. Collins is available." They sat in the waiting area, hyper-aware of every person who entered or exited, every glance cast in their direction. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, a door opened and a man in his 30s with prematurely gray hair appeared. "I'm Collins. Please come with me." He led them through a maze of cubicles to a small conference room, closing the door firmly behind them. "You have evidence related to Dreamcatcher?" he asked without preamble. Emma nodded, retrieving the USB drive from her pocket. "From Professor Malcolm Harlow of Marshall College. He was killed, made to look like suicide after documenting a pattern of disappearances in the Southwest." Collins took the drive, his expression grim. "Malcolm reached out to us shortly before his death. We were attempting to verify his claims, but he stopped responding to communications." He studied their faces. "How did you come to possess this?" They explained the entire story, the package left for Emma, their road trip, the black sedan that followed them, discovering the second drive at the petroglyph site, and their journey to Washington with the help of Dale's mysterious network. Collins listened without interruption, his face revealing nothing. When they finished, he was silent for a long moment. "What you've done is incredibly brave," he finally said, "and incredibly dangerous." Senator Gallagher has been investigating black budget operations like this for years, but without concrete evidence, progress has been limited. This, he held up the drive, could change everything. "What about our friends?" Tyler asked urgently. "Jaden and Myra are still out there, possibly being followed." "Give me their last known location and contact information," Collins instructed. "The senator has resources that can help locate them." He stood, suddenly businesslike. "In the meantime, we need to get you two to a secure location. If Harlow's evidence is as damning as he claimed, the people behind Dreamcatcher will stop at nothing to contain the situation." "And the senator?" Emma asked. "When do we meet with her?" "Senator Gallagher is currently in a closed committee hearing. She'll be briefed immediately afterward." Collins checked his watch. "For now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Emma hesitated, remembering Professor Harlow's warning to trust no one. But they had come this far, delivered the evidence as instructed. What choice did they have now? "Yes," she said finally. "We trust you." Collins nodded, relief evident in his posture. "Good, wait here while I make arrangements. Don't leave this room, don't speak to anyone else. I'll be back in 20 minutes. After he left, Emma and Tyler sat in exhausted silence, the weight of the past week pressing down on them. "Do you think we did it?" Tyler asked eventually. "Made a difference?" Emma thought of Professor Harlow's desperate face in that final video, of the hiker being led into the mysterious hatch, of Dale's missing nephew. "I hope so," she replied, "for all their sakes." Exactly 18 minutes later, the door opened. Instead of Collins, a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair and piercing eyes entered the room. Senator Miranda Gallagher. Emma recognized her from news coverage, closed the door, and faced them directly. "Mr. Collins briefed me on your situation," she said without introduction. "I've reviewed enough of Professor Harlow's evidence to know that what you've brought us is explosive." Her voice was measured but couldn't entirely conceal her anger. "Unauthorized detention facilities operating on U.S. soil, American citizens disappearing without due process. This goes against everything our country stands for." "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Now," the senator's expression hardened. "We blow this wide open. I've already contacted trusted colleagues on the Intelligence Oversight Committee. We're convening an emergency session this afternoon." She paused, studying them. "But first, we need to ensure your safety and locate your friends." "Have you heard anything about Jaden and Myra?" Tyler asked anxiously. The senator exchanged a glance with Collins, who had entered behind her. "We have," she said carefully, "and that's why we need to move quickly." Emma's heart sank. "What happened?" "Are they okay? Your friend Jaden managed to send an emergency message through the secure server where you uploaded the backup files," Collins explained, handing Emma a printout. "It came in 30 minutes ago." The message was brief and chilling. "Intercepted near Pueblo, Myra creating diversion so I could escape. Unknown black site, coordinates attached. Hurry." Emma's hands trembled as she read the message. "They have Myra," she whispered, "like all the others." "Not for long," Senator Gallagher stated firmly. "I've already initiated contact with the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group. Unlike the agency running Dreamcatcher, they operate within the law. But FBI raids take time to organize," Collins added. "Time your friend may not have." "Then what can we do?" Tyler demanded. Senator Gallagher fixed them with an intense gaze. "We go public, immediately. No classified operation can withstand the scrutiny of a full media spotlight. Once this story breaks, they'll have to secure their assets, including your friend, rather than risk exposure by making her disappear permanently. I have contacts at the Washington Post and the New York Times, Collins said. They can have the story online within the hour print editions tomorrow morning. And I'm scheduled to appear on 3 major networks this evening to discuss infrastructure legislation, the senator added. I'll be changing the topic of conversation. Events moved with dizzying speed after that. Emma and Tyler were escorted to a secure location, a brownstone in Georgetown owned by a former intelligence officer who owed Senator Gallagher a favor. There, they worked with Collins to prepare their testimony and organize the evidence for maximum impact. By evening, the story had exploded across media platforms. Senator Alleges' secret government detention program screamed the headlines. Clips of Senator Gallagher's passionate denunciation of extrajudicial black sites on American soil went viral on social media. Professor Harlow's video of the hiker's abduction, carefully edited to protect his identity, played on a continuous loop on cable news. Shortly after midnight, Emma's phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. With shaking hands, she answered. "Emma, it's Jaden. They found us." The FBI raid on the facility near Pueblo had occurred just after sunset, a perfectly coordinated operation that secured the site with minimal resistance. Inside, they found not only Myra, shaken but unharmed, but 11 other detainees, including Colin Reeves, the hiker from Professor Harlow's video. "They never expected to be found," Jaden explained, his voice crackling with emotion. The agents running the site tried to wipe their systems when they realized what was happening, but the FBI's cyber team got there first. They've recovered thousands of files. "What about the men in the black sedan?" Emma asked. "The ones who followed us? At least 2 are in custody. The rest," Jaden paused. "Well, rats abandoning a sinking ship from what I hear." As dawn broke over Washington, D.C., Emma stood on the balcony of the brownstone, watching the city come to life. Tyler joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the morning chill. "Senator Gallagher's office called," he said quietly. "They've found 3 more facilities so far, and the Justice Department is opening a formal investigation into Professor Harlow's death." Emma nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. After a moment, she asked, "What happens to us now?" Tyler considered this. "I guess we go back to being regular college graduates, try to put our lives back together." He hesitated. "Though regular feels like a stretch after all this." "Nothing will ever be regular again," Emma murmured. "We know too much now about what people in power are capable of, about the things that happen in the empty spaces on the map." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Tyler suggested. "Maybe we're supposed to know, to witness, to speak up." Emma thought of Professor Harlow's final message. The truth needs to come out. They had fulfilled his last request, brought his evidence to light, potentially saved lives in the process. It didn't erase the horror of what they'd discovered or the trauma of their journey, but it meant something. It had to. 4 months later, as Detective Liam Sawyer stood in the shipping container at the Port of Baltimore, staring at the wall of evidence meticulously assembled by someone with intimate knowledge of the Dreamcatcher program, he understood he was looking at the next chapter of a story that had begun in the deserts of the Southwest. The journal lying open on the makeshift desk contained a final entry that sent chills down his spine. They thought exposing one operation would end it. They were wrong. The truth goes deeper than anyone suspects. Dreamcatcher was just the beginning. As he picked up the still recording camcorder, Detective Sawyer knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, that the 4 college students who had blown the whistle on Dreamcatcher had only scratched the surface of a much larger conspiracy. And second, that somewhere out there, Emma Reeves and her friends were still following the trail, still pursuing the truth, still fighting to expose the secrets hidden in plain sight. And this time they weren't running, they were hunting,